Design your dreams simply and in just a few steps with shimmering custom-matched wedding jewelry. You'll weave your love story and personal charm into every detail. I'm Patty, a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads, and today I'll guide you through the 3 simple but effective techniques to create a perfectly personalized necklace, bracelet, and earring set, creating easy crimp spacing, floating crimps, and creating a glue and clasp, which are, by the way, faster to learn than you think, and the result, absolutely lovely. We're using peach and lavender pearls here, but the best thing about making your own simple-to-make wedding jewelry is that you can choose any colors that you wish, interchanging pearls, crystals, and even gemstones. The array of options is huge. You can create the perfect coordinating accessories in your color palette for the bride as well as the whole wedding party. You can also check out our wedding reception decor ideas. Link is in the description area.
Get our email newsletter for beading news, sale announcements, new product announcements, and more. Link is in the description below.
Creating a floating crimp or a one-strand crimp, like you see here, is slightly different than a 2-strand crimp that joins 2 strands. There's less material for the crimp to hold onto when it's crimped into place. Be sure to choose a strand thick enough for your crimps to grasp. Here, I've used a 0.24 AccuFlex, which is a great option being fairly heavy. Something very thin like Fireline or even a 0.14 AccuFlex may not work as well with a floating crimp as it's harder for the crimp to grasp, and they could slide around. Solid crimps are a must in floating jewelry. To get started making the floating crimp with this necklace, we're going to use 20 inches of AccuFlex that I've pre-cut. It is 49 strand in 0.24 gauge, which is really perfect for this project. To get started, we're going to middle the AccuFlex, which means to put the ends together like that, and then just pull it through your fingers so we find the center. And once we found the center, mark it with a permanent marker. Just a little mark. Once you've found the center like that, we need to figure out how wide this width of beads is. So we have an 8mm bead, another couple millimeters, and 8mm. We end up with about 18 millimeters of space here, and we want to figure out what half of that is. Half of 18 is 9. So to figure out where I'm going to place my first crimp, about 9 millimeters over from center, I'm going to make another mark. I'm pretty good with millimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and eyeball it. So we have our center mark, which I'll kind of remark there. And then we have our edge mark where our new crimp goes. So now that I have my marks, I'm going to use my crimp tool. And in the little groove where I'm going to crimp, I'm just going to pick up the crimp bead. See how it's in there. And on the side where the crimp is going to go, I'm just going to thread the AccuFlex through. And I'm not using a lot of pressure there. I don't want to crimp down yet. Just holding it. And when I get down to my mark, make sure you've got the right mark. I'm going to go ahead and crimp it in place. Use lots of pressure. Turn it a quarter turn and use this outside groove to really close down your crimp nice and tight. Go around in a little circle if you need to. There we go. So that's nicely crimped. That'll stay. Then I'm going to grab a crimp cover. And I just use that little outside groove of the crimp tool to grab that. And I'll just close the crimp cover over the crimp bead. Okay, once that's nicely closed, I'm going to take note of where my center is there, and I'm going to thread beads from this side where the center is because I want to fill up that space. So I'll grab a peach pearl. That is beautiful. And remember, there's so many options for colors. One of these little rondelles, which are so beautiful, really gives it a nice touch, and a lavender pearl. And then all we need is another crimp bead at the end to finish this first floating crimp group. So I will just grab one of those crimps, thread it through, bring it down, and when I get it all the way down to the beads, I'm going to back it off just about 1 millimeter, not very far, just a little bit, so there's space for the crimp cover to go around it. Close that up. We'll grab another crimp cover here and apply that. And you just want to go around and make sure that seam is completely closed, which takes just a second. So there is the first crimp group. Nicely done. There is your floating crimp. Spacing floating jewelry can be a challenge, and eyeballing it doesn't always give a great result. So here is a great tip. Space with a straw. Cut a drinking straw to the length of the space you want between beads. Here I've used a 1-inch straw for the necklace and a 1/2-inch straw for the bracelet. Let's get started making our perfectly spaced second set of beads. So we're going to take your straw, which is cut to size, and thread it on to the end of the AccuFlex. It should go over the crimp cover and rest against the first bead, just gently. Then grab a crimp bead, thread it on, and let it fall right against the straw and crimp it down. Then you can go ahead and remove the straw, set that aside for the next group, close your crimp, and add the crimp cover. And just make sure that's completely closed. Looks really good. Okay. Then go ahead and thread on your second set of beads following your pattern. So I will grab a lavender pearl, a rondelle, and a peach pearl. Let this fall all the way down. And then you just add your second crimp to secure the group. Thread that on. All the way down against the pearl. Pull it back 1 millimeter so there's space for the crimp cover. Close it up. And add your last crimp cover. They can be a little bit challenging to get perfectly in place, but if you take the time, it's very worth it. You'll get a good result. And that's how you perfectly space floating crimps. This great glue and clasp is a wonderful minimalist finish to your floating jewelry. Add a little Dovecon 5-minute epoxy, and it's a fast and secure finish to your piece. Let's go ahead and get started on the clasp. So here is our finished necklace. All of the crimping groups are on there, so we just need a clasp. So in order to finish this up, we're going to make sure that the ends are the same length. So we want an 18.5-inch necklace on this one, is what we decided. So I'm going to find the center set of beads and center it at 9 inches on the ruler. And I want to end up with just about 18 inches. That's perfect. So I don't even have to trim it. If there were any extra, I would go ahead and do that now. The clasp will add an extra 1/2 inch, so we'll end up with 18.5 inches from this one. I have the clasp on a nice little silicone mat here to protect my work surface. And I've got my necklace here ready to go. Just have yourself set up. And go ahead and mix a little drop of the DevCon 5-minute epoxy. So I'm going to go ahead and just squirt a drop. You don't need a whole lot in there. Then a little tip, because the clasp is so small, using a toothpick to get the glue in there is a little hard. We're going to mix it with the toothpick, but we're going to use a very small piece of the AccuFlex to actually get the glue into the clasp. So let's go ahead and mix up the DevCon. Just want to incorporate all that part together. And you want to mix it for at least 30 seconds. All of the molecules from both parts need to be combined. That's good. Okay. So now I'm going to take my little scrap piece of AccuFlex and I'm going to pick up a bit of the DevCon. And I'm going to take one end of the clasp and just fill the clasp with the DevCon. You want to get it all the way down in there, so push it to the end. And you want to do that a few times. You have to get a sufficient amount in there, but you can only do a little at a time. The opening is so small that you have to be careful. And I'm trying not to get a lot on the outside, though I can clean it up with this alcohol and cotton swabs when I need to. Okay, it's pretty full. I'm going to go ahead and set my DevCon aside. And I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of alcohol and a cotton swab to make sure there is no DevCon on the outside. Then I'm just going to set that down and take one end of my AccuFlex, and you can slide it in with your fingers or you can use pliers. Just make sure it goes all the way to the end of the clasp. You're only going to glue one side at a time and just wait 5 minutes. Then you're going to fill the other side and glue that one. Now that you've learned to make this beautiful necklace with floating crimps, even spacing, and a gluing clasp, here's how they would apply to the earrings and bracelet. And here in the earring, you can see that we've used beading chain rather than AccuFlex, but we were still able to use the glue-in clasp. We used half a clasp and glued in the beading chain and used that to attach to the earring component. Down here you can see the floating crimps. One is a stopper for the bottom and there's one at the top here. And you can see we really didn't need to use spacing here. However, if we wanted to embellish the center, we could use the spacing technique here as well. As you can see, here is the glue-on clasp. It's just the same as in the necklace. And then you can see the even spacing in the crimping. It's half the size of the necklace, but it's still nice and even. And then you can see we have the floating crimps, just the same as a necklace. Now with these 3 techniques, you can make the necklace, the bracelet, and the earrings. Now that you've learned to make this beautiful necklace with floating crimps, even spacing, and a gluing clasp, I hope you take these new simple but effective techniques forward in your jewelry making. If you make your own wedding jewelry, make sure to post it and tag us. We really want to see what you create for your special day. Thank you so much for being here. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and sign up for our email newsletter. Links to that and to the materials in today's project are in the description box below. See you next time.